Question 1. Implementation of a clear policy for Endeavour Group employees regarding the acceptance of gifts from suppliers and business partners, considering the potential for conflicts of interest and adherence to Australian corporate governance principles, would best be managed by which of the following approaches? Option A. Employees are encouraged to accept all gifts as a sign of goodwill, with the understanding that they will be donated to a company-sponsored charity at the end of the financial year. Option B. Employees are permitted to accept any gift offered by a supplier or business partner, as this fosters positive business relationships and is a common practice in the industry. Option C. Employees are empowered to use their discretion to accept gifts of nominal value, with a clear guideline that any gift exceeding a defined monetary threshold or appearing to be an inducement must be declined or reported to management for approval. Option D. Employees should only accept gifts that are explicitly approved in advance by the CEO, regardless of their value or nature, to ensure maximum control. Correct answer is C. Employees are empowered to use their discretion to accept gifts of nominal value, with a clear guideline that any gift exceeding a defined monetary threshold or appearing to be an inducement must be declined or reported to management for approval. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Endeavour Group employees regarding the ethical and regulatory implications of accepting gifts. Navigating this requires a deep understanding of Endeavour Group's internal policies, which are designed to uphold integrity and prevent conflicts of interest, and are informed by broader Australian corporate governance principles and consumer protection laws. The core challenge lies in distinguishing between appropriate tokens of appreciation and inducements that could compromise professional judgment or create an unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all actions align with Endeavour Group's commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough review of Endeavour Group's gift, hospitality, and entertainment policy, coupled with an assessment of the gift's value, frequency, and potential to influence business decisions. This approach prioritizes transparency and adherence to established internal guidelines, which are themselves designed to align with Australian consumer law and competition regulations, by preventing practices that could be seen as misleading or deceptive, or that could lead to anti-competitive behavior. By seeking clarification or declining gifts that exceed defined thresholds or appear to be intended as inducements, employees uphold their fiduciary duty and maintain public trust. An incorrect approach that involves accepting a gift without considering its value or potential implications fails to uphold the spirit and letter of Endeavour Group's policy and relevant Australian regulations. This could lead to breaches of corporate governance standards, potentially creating a perception of impropriety or actual conflicts of interest. Accepting a gift that could be construed as a bribe or undue influence would violate principles of fair dealing and could expose Endeavour Group to reputational damage and regulatory scrutiny under Australian consumer protection laws. Another incorrect approach, such as accepting all gifts regardless of their nature, demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the potential for conflicts of interest. This can erode trust with suppliers and customers, and may inadvertently lead to breaches of anti-bribery and corruption legislation. Furthermore, failing to report or declare significant gifts, as often required by company policy, can be seen as a deliberate attempt to conceal potential impropriety, undermining the integrity of the organization. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's code of conduct and specific policies on gifts and hospitality. When faced with a gift, professionals should ask, what is the value of this gift? Is it a customary gesture or an unusual offering? Could accepting this gift influence my decision-making or create a perception of bias? Does it align with Endeavour Group's stated values and ethical standards? If there is any doubt, the professional should consult their manager or the relevant compliance department, or politely decline the gift, ensuring that their actions are always transparent and defensible. Question 2. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group is planning a new promotional campaign for a craft beer range. What approach best aligns with Endeavour Group's obligations under Australian liquor licensing laws and responsible service of alcohol principles? Option A. Implement a buy one, get one free offer on all craft beers to encourage trial and increase sales volume. Option B. Develop a social media campaign featuring influencers consuming large quantities of the craft beers to generate buzz and excitement. Option C. Design the promotion to highlight the unique flavor profiles and brewing process of the craft beers, with clear messaging about enjoying them responsibly and information on responsible consumption. Option D. Focus the promotion on a limited-time discount for the entire craft beer range, encouraging customers to purchase as much as they can before the offer ends. The correct answer is C. Design the promotion to highlight the unique flavor profiles and brewing process of the craft beers, with clear messaging about enjoying them responsibly and information on responsible consumption. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Endeavour Group employees due to the inherent conflict between promoting company products and adhering to responsible service principles. The need to balance commercial objectives with legal and ethical obligations regarding alcohol service requires careful judgment. Misinterpreting or disregarding these obligations can lead to significant reputational damage, financial penalties, and harm to individuals and the community. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and mitigating risks associated with promotional activities. This means ensuring that any promotions offered by Endeavour Group are designed and implemented in a manner that does not encourage excessive consumption or target vulnerable individuals. This aligns with the principles of responsible service of alcohol, which are enshrined in Australian liquor licensing legislation. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to complying with the responsible service of alcohol (RSA) training and obligations mandated by state and territory liquor laws, such as those under the Liquor Act 2007, NSW, or equivalent legislation in other Australian states. The focus is on preventing harm and promoting a safe drinking environment, which is a core ethical and legal duty for all staff involved in alcohol service. Incorrect approaches analysis. Promoting a new high-alcohol content beverage without considering its potential impact on responsible consumption is ethically unsound and legally risky. It prioritizes sales over safety, potentially contravening responsible service of alcohol obligations by failing to adequately assess and manage the risks associated with promoting a product that could easily lead to intoxication. Focusing solely on sales targets without integrating responsible service principles into promotional strategies demonstrates a disregard for regulatory requirements. This approach risks encouraging staff to overlook signs of intoxication or to push sales in a way that compromises customer well-being, directly violating the spirit and letter of responsible service of alcohol laws. Implementing a promotion that offers unlimited free drinks for a set period, even if framed as a limited-time offer, poses a significant risk of encouraging excessive consumption. This directly contradicts the fundamental principles of responsible service of alcohol, which aim to prevent intoxication and its associated harms, and would likely be viewed as a breach of licensing conditions and responsible service obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Endeavour Group should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves understanding the specific legislative requirements for responsible service of alcohol in their operating jurisdiction. For implementing any promotion, they should conduct a risk assessment to identify potential harms, such as encouraging excessive consumption, targeting vulnerable patrons, or promoting to minors. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and embedded into the promotion's design and execution. Regular training and reinforcement of responsible service principles are crucial. In situations of doubt or potential conflict between sales and responsibility, seeking guidance from management or compliance officers is paramount. The decision-making process should always prioritize legal compliance and ethical conduct over short-term commercial gains. Question 3. During the evaluation of a new promotional campaign for Endeavour Group's liquor retail outlets, which approach best balances commercial objectives with regulatory compliance and ethical consumer engagement in Australia. Option A. Designing a campaign featuring a happy hour with significantly reduced prices on all alcoholic beverages for an extended period, accompanied by vibrant imagery that emphasizes celebration and social gatherings. Option B. Developing a campaign that offers a buy one, get one free deal on a range of popular spirits, with the terms and conditions clearly displayed on a small sign at the point of sale. Option C. Implementing a mystery discount where customers receive a random percentage off their total alcohol purchase, with the discount percentage revealed only at the checkout and no prior indication of the potential savings. Option D. Creating a promotion that offers a discount on a purchase of a specific premium wine, when a customer also purchases a non-alcoholic item, with all conditions and eligibility criteria clearly communicated in the advertising material. The correct answer is B. Developing a campaign that offers a buy one, get one free deal on a range of popular spirits, with the terms and conditions clearly displayed on a small sign at the point of sale. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's commercial interests with its legal and ethical obligations to consumers and the market. Endeavour Group, as a large retail entity, operates under significant regulatory scrutiny, particularly concerning responsible alcohol sales and marketing. The challenge lies in crafting promotional activities that are both attractive to customers and compliant with the Australian regulatory framework governing liquor sales and advertising. Careful judgment is required to avoid misleading consumers, promoting excessive consumption, or engaging in unfair trading practices. The correct approach involves designing promotions that are transparent, clearly state any conditions, and do not encourage irresponsible drinking. This aligns with the principles of consumer protection and responsible service of alcohol mandated by Australian consumer law and state-specific liquor licensing legislation. Specifically, promotions must not be misleading or deceptive, and they must adhere to any restrictions on advertising alcohol, such as prohibitions on targeting minors or promoting excessive consumption. This approach upholds Endeavour Group's commitment to responsible business practices and maintains consumer trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing sales through aggressive discounting, without considering the regulatory implications, risks contravening the Australian Consumer Law ACL. By engaging in misleading or deceptive conduct, if the terms are not clearly communicated, could also breach state liquor licensing laws if the promotion implicitly or explicitly encourages excessive consumption. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes novelty over compliance, such as using imagery or language that could be interpreted as promoting irresponsible drinking or appealing to underage individuals, would directly violate advertising standards and liquor promotion regulations, leading to potential fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach that involves offering incentives that are difficult to redeem or have hidden costs would be considered unfair trading practices under the ACL. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant Australian consumer law, liquor licensing acts, and any industry codes of conduct applicable to Endeavour Group. Before launching any promotion, a risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential legal, ethical, and reputational pitfalls. Seeking legal and compliance advice is crucial, especially for novel or complex promotional activities. The decision should always prioritize consumer welfare and regulatory compliance, even if it means forgoing a potentially more profitable but non-compliant strategy. Question 4. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group's recent operational changes in several venues may have inadvertently increased the risk of customers becoming excessively intoxicated or engaging in problematic gambling. Which of the following approaches best addresses this compliance concern, ensuring adherence to Australian regulatory frameworks? Option A. Immediately implement enhanced staff training programs focused on identifying and responding to signs of intoxication and problem gambling, alongside a review and update of existing responsible service policies to align with current legislative requirements and best practices. Option B. Introduce new promotional offers designed to encourage longer customer stays and increase spending, with a directive to staff to be more lenient in enforcing responsible service guidelines to avoid customer complaints. Option C. Conduct a superficial review of staff training records and make minor adjustments to existing policies, prioritizing operational efficiency and customer flow over detailed risk mitigation. Option D. Continue with the implemented operational changes, assuming that staff are sufficiently trained and that existing policies are adequate, with a focus on monitoring sales figures to gauge customer satisfaction. The correct answer is A. Immediately implement enhanced staff training programs focused on identifying and responding to signs of intoxication and problem gambling, alongside a review and update of existing responsible service policies to align with current legislative requirements and best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a licensed entity, must navigate the complex and evolving regulatory landscape governing responsible service of alcohol and gambling. The core difficulty lies in balancing commercial objectives with the paramount duty to prevent harm to customers and the community. A nuanced understanding of the specific requirements under Australian liquor and gaming legislation, particularly those pertaining to responsible conduct, is essential. This requires careful judgment to identify and mitigate risks associated with customer behavior, staff training, and the physical environment. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive review of existing policies and procedures against the latest legislative requirements and industry best practices. This includes ensuring staff are adequately trained and equipped to identify and respond to signs of intoxication or problem gambling, and that the venue's layout and service practices minimize potential harm. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant, as it directly addresses the legislative intent to protect vulnerable individuals and maintain public safety. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible operation, which is a fundamental requirement for any entity holding a liquor or gaming license in Australia. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing sales without adequate consideration for responsible service would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the legislative framework designed to prevent alcohol-related harm and problem gambling. Such an approach risks significant penalties, including fines, license suspension, or cancellation, and severely damages the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach that relies on outdated training materials or assumes staff knowledge without regular reinforcement is also professionally unsound. This neglects the dynamic nature of regulations and the need for continuous professional development. It creates a significant compliance gap and exposes the company to risks associated with staff not being equipped to handle challenging situations appropriately. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes customer convenience over safety, for example, by not enforcing intoxication limits or by offering incentives that encourage excessive consumption or gambling, is ethically and legally indefensible. This directly contravenes the principles of responsible service and demonstrates a failure to uphold the company's duty of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment, a thorough understanding of all applicable Australian laws and regulations, including state-specific liquor and gaming acts, and a commitment to continuous improvement. This includes regular audits, staff training, and a culture that prioritizes compliance and customer well-being above short-term commercial gains. Question 5. Performance analysis shows that Endeavour Group is experiencing a significant shift in consumer purchasing habits impacting its core product lines. Management is aware that this trend, if publicly disclosed, could lead to a substantial downward revision of future earnings forecasts. What is the most appropriate course of action for Endeavour Group's management to ensure compliance with Australian regulatory frameworks and ethical best practices? Option A. Delay public disclosure of the consumer purchasing habit shift until a comprehensive strategic plan to mitigate its impact has been fully developed and approved internally. Option B. Immediately disclose the observed consumer purchasing habit shift and its potential impact on future earnings forecasts to the ASX, while simultaneously initiating a review of strategic responses. Option C. Focus on internal operational adjustments to counter the trend, assuming that the market will eventually absorb the impact without requiring immediate formal disclosure. Option D. Inform key institutional investors privately about the trend and its potential implications before making a public announcement to the ASX. The correct answer is B. Immediately disclose the observed consumer purchasing habit shift and its potential impact on future earnings forecasts to the ASX, while simultaneously initiating a review of strategic responses. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between achieving business objectives and adhering to regulatory obligations. Endeavour Group, as a publicly listed entity, subject to stringent Australian Securities Exchange Acts, Listing Rules and Corporations Act 2001, CTH, requirements regarding continuous disclosure and fair market conduct. Misinterpreting or selectively applying information can lead to insider trading risks and market manipulation, which carry severe penalties. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all material information is disseminated in a timely and accurate manner, without creating undue market speculation or disadvantaging any segment of investors. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive communication strategy that prioritizes transparency and compliance with continuous disclosure obligations. This means identifying potential market-sensitive information early, assessing its materiality, and preparing to disclose it promptly and accurately to the market via the ASX. This aligns with the ASX listing rules, particularly Chapter 19, which outlines the obligations for listed entities to keep the market informed of any information that a reasonable person would expect to have a material effect on the price or value of the entity's securities. It also upholds the ethical duty to act with integrity and fairness towards all stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on managing short-term, share price fluctuations without considering the broader disclosure obligations would be professionally unacceptable. This could involve withholding material information until a more opportune moment for the company, thereby breaching the continuous disclosure principle. Such an action risks creating an uneven playing field for investors and could be construed as market manipulation or insider trading, violating the Corporations Act 2001, CTH, and ASX listing rules. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes internal strategic planning over immediate market communication would also be flawed. While internal strategic discussions are vital, if they involve information that is material to the company's value, this information must be disclosed to the market before being acted upon internally in a way that could be perceived as advantageous. Failing to do so can lead to accusations of selective disclosure or insider trading. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a robust internal framework for identifying, assessing, and disclosing material information. This framework should include clear lines of responsibility, regular training for relevant personnel on disclosure obligations, and a mechanism for seeking legal and compliance advice when in doubt. Professionals should always err on the side of caution and prioritize timely, accurate, and comprehensive disclosure to the market, ensuring that all investors have access to the same information simultaneously. Question 6. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group has recently updated its responsible service of alcohol training modules. However, there is a concern that the implementation of these updated modules across all venues has been inconsistent, with some staff members not having completed the latest version. Which of the following approaches best addresses this compliance gap and upholds Endeavour Group's regulatory obligations? Option A. Rely on existing internal audit mechanisms to identify and address training deficiencies on a case-by-case basis as they arise. Option B. Implement a mandatory, company-wide refresher training program for all staff, coupled with a robust tracking system to monitor completion and ensure ongoing adherence to the updated modules. Option C. Immediately cease all alcohol service at venues where training completion rates are below 95% until full compliance is achieved. Option D. Conduct a targeted audit of venues with reported incidents of non-compliance to ensure the updated training has been delivered. The correct answer is D. Conduct a targeted audit of venues with reported incidents of non-compliance to ensure the updated training has been delivered. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a licensed entity, must navigate the complex and evolving regulatory landscape governing responsible service of alcohol and gambling. The core difficulty lies in balancing commercial objectives with the paramount duty to prevent harm to customers and the community. A nuanced understanding of the specific Australian regulatory framework, particularly the Liquor Act and relevant gambling legislation in the relevant state/territory, is crucial. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these regulations can lead to significant penalties, reputational damage, and most importantly, harm to vulnerable individuals. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive review of Endeavour Group's internal policies and procedures against the most recent legislative updates and industry best practices. This ensures that the company's operational framework is not only compliant, but also robust in mitigating risks associated with alcohol service and gambling. Specifically, it requires a thorough examination of staff training effectiveness, the implementation of responsible gambling measures, and the adequacy of systems for identifying and responding to signs of intoxication or problem gambling. This approach is ethically sound and legally mandated, as it demonstrates a commitment to fulfilling the company's obligations under the law and its social license to operate. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on historical compliance data, without actively seeking out and incorporating recent legislative changes. It fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of regulation and leaves the company vulnerable to noncompliance with current standards. Another incorrect approach is to focus only on the minimum legal requirements without considering industry best practices or the spirit of the legislation, which aims to prevent harm. This can lead to a superficial level of compliance that may not adequately protect customers. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes revenue generation over customer well-being, even if seemingly within the letter of the law, would be ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it undermines the fundamental principles of responsible service. Professionals should adopt a continuous improvement mindset when it comes to compliance. This involves establishing regular review cycles for policies and procedures, staying informed about legislative amendments through industry bodies and regulatory updates, and fostering a culture where compliance and customer safety are seen as integral to business success. When faced with such a review, the decision-making process should prioritize understanding the specific regulatory obligations, assessing current practices against those obligations, identifying gaps, and implementing corrective actions that are both effective and sustainable. Question 7. The performance metrics show a significant opportunity to increase sales of a particular premium spirit through a targeted online advertising campaign for Endeavour Group. The proposed campaign includes limited-time discounts and bundled offers, with the aim of driving immediate customer acquisition and repeat purchases. However, there is a concern that the aggressive nature of these promotions might inadvertently encourage excessive consumption. Endeavour Group is operating under Australian liquor licensing laws and its own internal responsible service of alcohol (RSA) policies. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Implement the campaign immediately to capitalize on the current market opportunity, with a plan to adjust the promotions later if customer feedback indicates any concerns about responsible consumption. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed campaign against Endeavour Group's RSA policies and relevant Australian advertising regulations for alcohol, seeking input from the legal and compliance teams to ensure all promotional elements are responsible and compliant before launch. Option C. Rely on the experience of the marketing team to ensure the campaign is conducted responsibly, as they have successfully managed similar promotions in the past without significant issues. Option D. Proceed with the campaign as planned, focusing on the projected revenue increase, and address any potential responsible service issues reactively if they arise. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the campaign as planned, focusing on the projected revenue increase, and address any potential responsible service issues reactively if they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a licensed entity, must navigate the complexities of responsible service of alcohol and marketing practices. The core tension lies in balancing commercial objectives with the legal and ethical obligations to prevent harm associated with alcohol consumption. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any promotional activities do not inadvertently encourage excessive drinking or target vulnerable individuals, thereby upholding Endeavour Group's commitment to responsible practices and compliance with Australian liquor licensing laws and industry codes. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed marketing campaign against Endeavour Group's responsible service of alcohol, RSA policies, and relevant Australian consumer protection laws, specifically those pertaining to advertising and promotions in the liquor industry. This approach ensures that the campaign adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations designed to minimize alcohol-related harm. It prioritizes a proactive assessment of potential risks and compliance with established internal and external standards, demonstrating a commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory adherence. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential revenue uplift without considering the responsible service implications fails to acknowledge the legal and ethical duties of Endeavour Group. This oversight can lead to breaches of liquor licensing conditions, potential fines, reputational damage, and a failure to uphold community expectations regarding responsible alcohol consumption. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed to market over due diligence risks overlooking subtle but significant compliance issues. This haste can result in campaigns that, while not overtly illegal, may still contravene industry codes of conduct or ethical marketing principles, leading to negative public perception and potential regulatory scrutiny. A further incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past practices without a formal review process is insufficient. Regulatory frameworks and best practices evolve, and a robust decision-making process requires a systematic evaluation against current standards and policies, rather than assumptions based on historical norms. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying potential regulatory breaches, ethical concerns, and reputational risks associated with any proposed action. It necessitates consulting relevant internal policies, legal counsel, and, where appropriate, industry guidelines. The ultimate decision should be guided by a principle of responsible conduct, prioritizing compliance and the minimization of harm over short-term gains. Question 8. System analysis indicates that a patron at an Endeavour Group venue is exhibiting signs of potential intoxication, including slurred speech and unsteady gait, but states they are just tired and want another drink. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Endeavour Group employee to take, adhering to Australian responsible service of alcohol principles? Option A. Accept the patron's explanation and serve them another drink to maintain customer satisfaction. Option B. Immediately call security to escort the patron out of the venue without further assessment. Option C. Serve the patron another drink but inform them that it is their last one. Option D. Politely but firmly refuse further alcohol service, offer water or food, and monitor the patron's condition, in line with Endeavour Group's RSA training and relevant Australian liquor laws. The correct answer is D. Politely but firmly refuse further alcohol service, offer water or food, and monitor the patron's condition, in line with Endeavour Group's RSA training and relevant Australian liquor laws. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee regarding the responsible service of alcohol, specifically in identifying and managing a patron who may be intoxicated. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's commitment to customer service and a positive patron experience with the paramount legal and ethical obligation to prevent intoxication and harm. Accurate assessment of intoxication, adherence to Endeavour Group's responsible service of alcohol (RSA) policies, and compliance with Australian alcohol licensing laws are critical. Failure to correctly identify and manage an intoxicated patron can lead to significant legal penalties for the individual and Endeavour Group, reputational damage, and most importantly, harm to the patron and others. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based assessment of the patron's behavior and condition, followed by a clear and professional refusal of further service if intoxication is evident, in line with Endeavour Group's RSA training and relevant Australian state or territory liquor legislation. This approach prioritizes safety and legal compliance. It requires the employee to observe multiple indicators of intoxication, not rely on a single cue, and to communicate their decision respectfully but firmly, offering alternatives like water or food, and ensuring the patron can leave safely. This aligns with the duty of care owed by licensed venues and their staff under Australian law. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the patron's subjective claim of not being intoxicated, despite observable signs, fails to uphold the duty of care and breaches RSA principles, prioritizes the patron's immediate desire over their safety and the legal requirements. Another incorrect approach, which involves serving the patron to avoid confrontation or negative feedback, directly contravenes RSA obligations and exposes Endeavour Group to significant legal and financial risks. This demonstrates a failure to prioritize responsible service and a lack of understanding of the potential consequences. A third incorrect approach, which involves immediately calling security without attempting a preliminary assessment or de-escalation, may be an overreaction if the patron is not yet demonstrably intoxicated and misses an opportunity for responsible intervention and customer service within legal bounds. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with observation and assessment, referencing their RSA training and company policies. If intoxication is suspected, they should consider multiple indicators, consult with a supervisor if unsure, and then make a decision based on the evidence and legal requirements. Communication should be clear, polite, and focused on safety and alternatives. This systematic process ensures that decisions are defensible, compliant, and ethically sound, prioritizing the well-being of all patrons and the integrity of Endeavour Group's operations. Question 9. Market research demonstrates that customers at an Endeavour Group outlet are often in a hurry. An employee is serving a customer who appears to be of legal drinking age but has not been asked for identification. The customer is ordering a significant quantity of alcohol. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Endeavour Group employee to ensure compliance with Australian liquor licensing laws and responsible service of alcohol principles? Option A. Politely request to see the customer's valid identification to verify their age and assess their level of intoxication before completing the sale. Option B. Proceed with the sale as quickly as possible to meet customer expectations for speed, assuming the customer is of legal age and not intoxicated. Option C. Ask the customer if they are over 18 and if they have had enough to drink, accepting their verbal response without further verification. Option D. Serve the customer, but make a mental note to check their identification later if any issues arise. Correct answer is A. Politely request to see the customer's valid identification to verify their age and assess their level of intoxication before completing the sale. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee because it requires balancing commercial objectives with regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. The pressure to achieve sales targets can sometimes lead individuals to overlook or misinterpret regulatory requirements, creating a risk of non-compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all sales activities are conducted within the bounds of the law and Endeavour Group's internal policies, particularly concerning responsible service of alcohol. The correct approach involves proactively seeking clarification and adhering strictly to the responsible service of alcohol (RSA) guidelines as mandated by Australian liquor licensing laws. This demonstrates a commitment to both legal obligations and ethical business practices. By understanding and applying these regulations, the employee ensures that Endeavour Group operates responsibly, mitigates legal risks, and upholds its reputation. This approach aligns with the core principles of responsible service, which are designed to prevent intoxication and harm. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the sale without confirming the customer's age or intoxication level is a direct contravention of RSA regulations. This failure to verify age or assess intoxication poses a significant legal risk, potentially leading to fines, license suspension for the venue, and damage to Endeavour Group's reputation. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for community safety and responsible alcohol consumption. Another incorrect approach, which is to assume the customer is of legal age and not intoxicated based on their appearance, is also a regulatory failure. RSA laws require active verification, not passive assumption. This assumption can lead to serving minors or intoxicated persons, with severe consequences. It bypasses the due diligence expected of all staff involved in alcohol service. Finally, an approach that involves serving the customer but making a mental note to check their ID later is fundamentally flawed. This is not a recognized or legally compliant method of age verification. Creates a situation where a potentially underage or intoxicated person has already been served, and any subsequent check is reactive rather than preventative. This approach fails to meet the proactive requirements of RSA and exposes Endeavour Group to significant risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant Australian liquor licensing laws and Endeavour Group's specific RSA policies. When faced with ambiguity or a situation that might push the boundaries of compliance, the professional should always err on the side of caution. This means pausing the transaction, seeking guidance from a supervisor or manager, or directly consulting the relevant regulatory guidelines. Prioritizing compliance and responsible service over immediate sales is paramount for long-term business sustainability and ethical operation. Question 10. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group has identified a significant operational issue in one of its key distribution centers that is likely to cause a temporary disruption to supply chains. What is the most appropriate course of action for Endeavour Group's compliance and legal teams to take regarding disclosure obligations? Option A. Wait until the full extent of the operational issue and its financial impact are definitively quantified before making any public announcement. Option B. Immediately prepare and lodge a market announcement with the ASX detailing the nature of the operational issue, its potential impact on supply chains, and the steps being taken to mitigate the disruption. Option C. Inform key institutional investors and analysts about the operational issue privately to allow them to prepare for potential market movements. Option D. Release a brief statement acknowledging an operational challenge, without providing specific details about the issue or its potential impact. The correct answer is B. Immediately prepare and lodge a market announcement with the ASX detailing the nature of the operational issue, its potential impact on supply chains, and the steps being taken to mitigate the disruption. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a publicly listed entity, must adhere to strict Australian Securities Exchange Acts, Listing Rules and Corporations Act 2001, CTH, requirements regarding continuous disclosure. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to inform the market promptly with the imperative to ensure the accuracy and completeness of the information released. Premature or incomplete disclosure can lead to market manipulation concerns and regulatory penalties, while delayed disclosure can disadvantage investors. Careful judgment is required to determine when information is sufficiently developed to warrant disclosure. Correct approach involves a thorough internal assessment of the potential impact of the identified operational issue on Endeavour Group's financial performance and strategic outlook. This assessment should be conducted by relevant senior management and legal/compliance teams to ascertain the materiality of the issue. Once materiality is established, the information should be prepared for release in a clear, concise, and factual manner, ensuring all material aspects are covered. This aligns with ASX Listing Rule 3.1, which mandates immediate disclosure of any information concerning the entity that a reasonable person would expect to have a material effect on the price or value of the entity's securities. The focus is on providing the market with the necessary information to make informed investment decisions without causing undue speculation or misinterpretation. An incorrect approach would be to immediately release a vague statement without a proper assessment of the issue's impact. This fails to meet the materiality threshold for disclosure under Listing Rule 3.1 and could be seen as an attempt to manage market perception rather than provide genuine information, potentially leading to accusations of misleading the market. Another incorrect approach would be to withhold the information entirely, even after determining it is material, with the intention of waiting for more definitive outcomes. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of continuous disclosure obligations, exposing Endeavour Group to significant penalties from the ASX and the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASIC. A third incorrect approach would be to disclose the information only to a select group of analysts or investors before it is made public. This constitutes selective disclosure and breaches the principle of equal access to information for all market participants, a fundamental tenet of fair markets, and a violation of continuous disclosure principles. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with identifying potential reportable information. This is followed by an assessment of materiality, considering the potential impact on the entity's financial position, performance, and share price. If deemed material, the information should be prepared for public release, ensuring accuracy and completeness, and then promptly disclosed to the ASX. A robust internal compliance framework, including clear policies and procedures for disclosure, is crucial to guide these decisions and ensure consistent adherence to regulatory requirements. Question 11. Investigation of a potential conflict of interest at Endeavour Group. An employee discovers that a close personal friend has submitted a bid for a significant supply contract. The employee is part of the team responsible for evaluating these bids. What is the most appropriate course of action for the employee? Option A. Proceed with the evaluation as normal, ensuring they remain objective and do not let the personal relationship influence their decision. Option B. Discreetly provide their friend with insights into the evaluation criteria to help them strengthen their bid. Option C. Inform their friend about the bids submitted by other competitors to help them adjust their pricing. Option D. Immediately declare the personal relationship to their supervisor and recuse themselves from all aspects of the bid evaluation process for that supplier. The correct answer is D. Immediately declare the personal relationship to their supervisor and recuse themselves from all aspects of the bid evaluation process for that supplier. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee due to the inherent conflict between personal relationships and the company's commitment to fair and transparent procurement processes. Maintaining the integrity of supplier selection is paramount to Endeavour Group's reputation and operational efficiency. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for perceived or actual bias, which can undermine trust with other suppliers and lead to suboptimal business outcomes. The correct approach involves a transparent declaration of the personal relationship and recusal from any decision-making processes related to the supplier in question. This aligns with Endeavour Group's likely internal policies on conflicts of interest, which are designed to uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance. Specifically, such a policy would aim to prevent situations where personal connections could unduly influence commercial decisions, ensuring that contracts are awarded based on merit, price, and quality, rather than favoritism. This proactive disclosure and recusal demonstrates integrity and a commitment to the company's best interests, safeguarding against potential breaches of corporate governance and ethical conduct expected within the Australian business environment. An incorrect approach of proceeding with the evaluation without disclosure risks creating an actual or perceived conflict of interest. This failure to declare a personal relationship violates fundamental ethical principles of fairness and impartiality, could lead to accusations of favoritism, damaging Endeavour Group's reputation among its supplier base, and potentially attracting regulatory scrutiny if procurement processes are found to be compromised. Another incorrect approach of subtly influencing the evaluation process in favor of the connected supplier, even if not overtly, is a severe ethical and potentially legal breach. This constitutes a form of misconduct that undermines the integrity of Endeavour Group's operations and could result in significant reputational damage, loss of trust, and disciplinary action, including termination. It directly contravenes the principles of good corporate governance and fair dealing. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. First, identify any potential conflicts of interest arising from personal relationships or external affiliations. Second, consult Endeavour Group's internal policies and procedures regarding conflicts of interest and disclosure. Third, if a conflict is identified, immediately disclose it to the relevant supervisor or compliance officer and recuse oneself from any involvement in the decision-making process. Finally, document the disclosure and recusal to ensure transparency and accountability. This systematic approach ensures that ethical standards are maintained and that Endeavour Group's business operations are conducted with integrity. Question 12. Strategic planning requires Endeavour Group to consider how customer data can be ethically and legally leveraged for marketing initiatives. Which of the following approaches best aligns with Australian regulatory frameworks and responsible data handling practices for Endeavour Group? Option A. Implementing marketing campaigns based on explicit customer consent obtained at the point of data collection, with clear communication about how their data will be used for promotional purposes. Option B. Sharing customer data with external marketing partners without verifying their adherence to Australian privacy standards. Option C. Utilizing purchase history to infer customer preferences and target them with relevant promotions without prior explicit consent or notification. Option D. Collecting broad categories of personal information for marketing, assuming customers implicitly agree to all potential uses. Correct answer is A. Implementing marketing campaigns based on explicit customer consent obtained at the point of data collection, with clear communication about how their data will be used for promotional purposes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Endeavour Group employees regarding the ethical and regulatory implications of leveraging customer data for marketing. The challenge lies in balancing the commercial imperative to drive sales and customer engagement with the strict requirements of Australian privacy law and responsible data handling practices. Employees must exercise careful judgment to ensure that any data-driven marketing strategies are not only effective, but also compliant and ethically sound, avoiding any perception of misuse or exploitation of customer information. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the Australian Privacy Principles, AP, as outlined in the Privacy Act 1988, CTH, specifically AP 3, Collection of Solicited Personal Information, and AP 5, Notification of the Collection of Personal Information, are paramount. This approach prioritizes obtaining informed consent for data collection and clearly communicating how that data will be used for marketing purposes. It also aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that data is only used for the specific purposes for which it was collected and for which consent has been given. This demonstrates a commitment to transparency and respect for customer privacy, which is a cornerstone of ethical business conduct and regulatory compliance in Australia. An incorrect approach that involves using customer data for marketing without explicit consent or clear notification fails to meet the requirements of APP 5. This constitutes a breach of privacy law, as individuals have a right to know what information is being collected about them and how it will be used. Another incorrect approach, which involves inferring marketing preferences from purchase history without any form of opt-in or clear communication, also risks violating the spirit and letter of the APPs. While inferring preferences might seem commercially beneficial, it can lead to unsolicited marketing and a perception of intrusive data analysis, potentially eroding customer trust and leading to regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach, which involves sharing customer data with third-party marketing agencies without ensuring those agencies adhere to Australian privacy standards, exposes Endeavour Group to significant regulatory risk and reputational damage, as the primary entity remains responsible for the protection of personal information. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the relevant legal and ethical obligations. This involves consulting internal policies, the Privacy Act 1988, CTH, and the Australian Privacy Principles. The next step is to assess the proposed marketing activity against these obligations, considering the type of data involved, the method of collection, and the intended use. If there is any ambiguity or potential for non-compliance, seeking guidance from legal or compliance departments is crucial. The ultimate decision should prioritize customer privacy and regulatory adherence, even if it means foregoing a potentially lucrative but non-compliant marketing opportunity. Question 13. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group is considering a new promotional campaign for a range of its alcoholic beverages. The marketing team has proposed creative concepts that highlight social gatherings and celebratory occasions, with a focus on the enjoyment and social benefits associated with consuming these products. The proposed campaign includes digital advertisements, in-store displays, and social media content. What is the most appropriate compliance approach for Endeavour Group to adopt before launching this campaign? Option A. Proceed with the campaign as planned, assuming that the focus on social enjoyment aligns with general consumer expectations and that past similar campaigns have not faced regulatory challenges. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed campaign materials against the Australian consumer law and relevant industry codes of practice to ensure responsible marketing and avoid any misleading or deceptive representations. Option C. Prioritize the campaign's potential to drive sales and market share, with compliance checks to be conducted only if specific concerns are raised by regulatory bodies after the campaign has commenced. Option D. Obtain informal verbal confirmation from the marketing manager that the campaign concepts are acceptable and unlikely to cause offense. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed campaign materials against the Australian consumer law and relevant industry codes of practice to ensure responsible marketing and avoid any misleading or deceptive representations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a responsible corporate entity, must navigate the complexities of responsible alcohol marketing while adhering to stringent Australian regulations and industry codes. The core difficulty lies in balancing commercial objectives with the imperative to avoid promoting irresponsible consumption or targeting vulnerable groups. Careful judgment is required to interpret the spirit and letter of the law, particularly in nuanced situations where marketing content could be perceived in multiple ways. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the proposed marketing campaign against the specific provisions of the Australian Consumer Law (ACL) and relevant industry codes, such as those administered by Alcohol Beverages Australia, ABA, or similar bodies applicable to Endeavour Group's operations. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes compliance and risk mitigation. It ensures that all marketing activities are assessed against established legal and ethical standards, providing a clear framework for decision-making and a defensible record in case of scrutiny. The regulatory justification stems from the ACL's prohibitions on misleading or deceptive conduct and its provisions regarding advertising standards, alongside industry codes that often impose stricter self-regulatory measures to promote responsible consumption. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on sales projections without a concurrent compliance assessment is professionally unacceptable. This fails to acknowledge the legal and ethical obligations to consumers and the broader community, potentially exposing Endeavour Group to significant penalties under the ACL for misleading or deceptive advertising. Another incorrect approach, which relies on informal verbal assurances from marketing personnel without documented evidence of compliance checks, is also flawed. This lacks the rigor required for regulatory adherence and leaves the company vulnerable. It bypasses the necessary due diligence and creates an audit trail deficit, making it difficult to demonstrate compliance if challenged. A third incorrect approach, which assumes that because a similar campaign was run previously without issue, it will automatically be compliant now, is also professionally unsound. Regulatory landscapes and interpretations can evolve, and each campaign must be assessed on its own merits and in the current context. This approach demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management and a failure to adapt to potential changes in compliance expectations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the product and marketing activity. This involves consulting relevant legislation, like the ACL and industry codes. Next, a risk assessment should be conducted, identifying potential areas of non-compliance or reputational damage. Following this, a structured review process involving legal and compliance expertise should be implemented to evaluate the proposed marketing content against these identified risks and requirements. Documentation of this process, including the rationale for decisions, is crucial for accountability and future reference. Question 14. When evaluating a personal investment opportunity that could potentially overlap with Endeavour Group's business activities, what is the most appropriate course of action for an Endeavour Group employee to ensure compliance with Australian regulatory requirements and ethical standards? Option A. Invest in the opportunity and disclose it only if a conflict actually arises during the course of employment. Option B. Seek informal advice from a trusted colleague within Endeavour Group before making a decision. Option C. Proceed with the investment if the potential overlap is minor and unlikely to cause significant issues. Option D. Immediately disclose the potential investment opportunity to Endeavour Group's compliance department for assessment and guidance. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the potential investment opportunity to Endeavour Group's compliance department for assessment and guidance. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Endeavour Group employees to navigate potential conflicts of interest and maintain public trust, which are core tenets of financial services regulation and ethical conduct. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission, a SIC, regulatory framework, particularly the Corporations Act 2001, and relevant ASIC regulatory guides, emphasizes the importance of acting honestly, efficiently, and fairly, and avoiding conduct that is likely to mislead or deceive. Employees are expected to uphold the reputation of the financial services industry. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the relevant internal compliance or management team at Endeavour Group. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and regulatory compliance. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of ASIC expectations regarding conflicts of interest management, which often mandates internal reporting mechanisms and clear procedures for assessing and mitigating such risks. By disclosing, the employee allows Endeavour Group to formally assess the situation, determine if the proposed investment poses a genuine conflict, and implement appropriate controls or restrictions if necessary, thereby protecting both the employee and the company from regulatory breaches and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the investment without disclosure fails to uphold the duty of care and diligence expected of financial services professionals. This can lead to breaches of the Corporations Act 2001, which requires directors and officers to act in good faith in the best interests of the corporation, and to exercise their powers and discharge their duties with the degree of care and diligence that a reasonable person would exercise if they were a director or officer in the corporation's circumstances. It also violates ethical principles of transparency and honesty. Another incorrect approach, which is to seek informal advice from a colleague without formal disclosure, is insufficient. While collegial discussion can be helpful, it does not constitute a formal process for managing conflicts of interest. Regulatory frameworks require documented procedures and official assessment, not casual conversations, to ensure compliance and mitigate risk effectively. This informal method bypasses established internal controls and leaves the situation open to subjective interpretation, increasing the likelihood of a regulatory oversight or ethical lapse. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the company's internal policies on conflicts of interest, a thorough review of relevant regulatory obligations, such as those outlined by a SIC, and a commitment to transparency. When in doubt, employees should err on the side of caution and disclose any potential conflict, seeking guidance from their compliance department or manager. This proactive stance ensures that potential risks are identified and managed appropriately, safeguarding both individual careers and the integrity of Endeavour Group. Question 15. Compliance review shows that Endeavour Group's marketing department has proposed a new promotional campaign for a range of its beverage products that includes incentives for purchasing multiple items and features imagery that could be interpreted as promoting excessive consumption. What is the most appropriate course of action for the compliance team to ensure adherence to Australian regulatory frameworks? Option A. Advise the marketing team to conduct a self-assessment of the campaign against broad ethical marketing principles and proceed if they deem it acceptable. Option B. Immediately halt the campaign and require a complete overhaul of the promotional materials to ensure strict adherence to all relevant Australian liquor advertising regulations and responsible consumption guidelines. Option C. Approve the campaign as proposed, assuming the marketing team has considered general advertising principles and that the commercial benefits outweigh minor potential concerns. Option D. Approve the campaign with minor textual disclaimers added, such as "drink responsibly," without a detailed review of the imagery or the multi-purchase incentive structure against specific legislative requirements. The correct answer is C. Approve the campaign as proposed, assuming the marketing team has considered general advertising principles and that the commercial benefits outweigh minor potential concerns. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Endeavour Group, as a licensed entity, must navigate the complex and evolving regulatory landscape governing responsible service of alcohol and gambling. The core difficulty lies in balancing commercial objectives with the paramount duty to prevent harm and uphold legal obligations. A nuanced understanding of the specific requirements under Australian liquor and gaming legislation, as well as Endeavour Group's internal policies, is crucial for making sound judgments. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive review of the proposed marketing campaign against all relevant Australian federal and state legislation pertaining to alcohol advertising, consumer protection, and responsible gambling. This includes but is not limited to the Liquor Control Act, or equivalent in relevant states, the Advertising Standards Code, and any specific guidelines issued by liquor licensing authorities. The justification for this approach is rooted in the legal and ethical imperative to ensure all marketing activities are compliant, do not encourage excessive consumption or gambling, and do not target vulnerable individuals. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible business practices and mitigating reputational and legal risks. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the campaign based solely on the marketing team's assessment of its creativity and potential commercial impact. This fails to acknowledge the stringent regulatory oversight and the potential for unintended consequences. The regulatory failure here is the omission of a thorough compliance check, which could lead to breaches of advertising standards, liquor licensing conditions, and consumer protection laws. Ethically, it prioritizes profit over public safety and responsible conduct. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the campaign with minor, superficial modifications that do not address the core regulatory concerns. This demonstrates a lack of genuine commitment to compliance and a superficial understanding of the risks. The regulatory failure is the failure to adequately mitigate identified risks, potentially leading to continued noncompliance. Ethically, it suggests a willingness to operate on the fringes of legality rather than adhering to the spirit and letter of the law. A third incorrect approach would be to delay the campaign indefinitely without a clear plan for achieving compliance. While caution is important, indefinite delay without a defined path forward can hinder business operations and signal a lack of proactive risk management. The regulatory failure is not necessarily a breach, but a missed opportunity to engage constructively with regulators and to implement compliant marketing strategies. Ethically, it can be seen as an avoidance of responsibility rather than a proactive approach to fulfilling obligations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying all potential regulatory touchpoints for the proposed activity. Next, a thorough review of applicable legislation and internal policies should be conducted. If ambiguities or potential conflicts arise, seeking expert legal or compliance advice is essential. The decision should then be based on a clear determination of compliance, with a documented rationale. If compliance cannot be assured, the activity should be modified or abandoned until it can be conducted responsibly and legally. Question 16. Analysis of how an Endeavour Group employee should manage a situation where a close friend's company is bidding for a significant supply contract, and the employee has influence over the tender evaluation process. Option A. Inform the friend's company about the specific scoring or evaluation feedback from other bids to help them understand where they might improve, without explicitly revealing confidential information. Option B. Discreetly provide the friend's company with insights into the tender requirements and competitor strategies to help them submit a more competitive bid. Option C. Conduct a thorough, documented evaluation of all bids against predefined, objective criteria, ensuring the friend's company is assessed impartially alongside all other competitors, and declare the conflict of interest to relevant stakeholders. Option D. Award the contract to the friend's company if their bid is reasonably competitive, rationalizing that supporting a friend is a secondary benefit. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough, documented evaluation of all bids against predefined, objective criteria, ensuring the friend's company is assessed impartially alongside all other competitors, and declare the conflict of interest to relevant stakeholders. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee due to the potential conflict between personal relationships and the company's commitment to fair and transparent procurement processes. Maintaining the integrity of supplier selection is paramount to Endeavour Group's reputation and operational efficiency. Careful judgment is required to navigate situations where personal connections might influence professional decisions, thereby compromising objectivity. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to Endeavour Group's established procurement policies and the relevant Australian consumer and competition laws, specifically the Competition and Consumer Act 2010, CTH, and any associated Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACC, guidelines. This approach prioritizes a formal, documented, and objective evaluation of all potential suppliers based on predefined criteria, such as price, quality, reliability, and service. It ensures that decisions are defensible, transparent, and free from undue influence, thereby upholding ethical standards and legal obligations. An incorrect approach that involves favoring a friend's company without a formal evaluation process would constitute a breach of Endeavour Group's internal policies and potentially contravene Australian competition law by engaging in anti-competitive conduct or misuse of market power. This could lead to unfair market outcomes and damage Endeavour Group's reputation. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to subtly steer the process without explicit favoritism, but still allowing the personal relationship to influence judgment, undermines the principle of objective decision-making and creates an appearance of impropriety, which is ethically unsound and could still lead to regulatory scrutiny if it results in a non-compliant outcome. A third incorrect approach, which involves disclosing confidential tender information to the friend's company, is a serious breach of confidentiality and trust, and could also be considered a contravention of competition law if it provides an unfair advantage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential conflicts of interest. They must then consult relevant company policies and applicable legislation. The process should involve seeking guidance from supervisors or legal/compliance departments when in doubt. Decisions must be documented, and the rationale for selecting or rejecting any supplier must be clearly articulated and based on objective criteria, ensuring accountability and transparency. Question 17. The audit findings indicate that a patron at an Endeavour Group venue is exhibiting clear signs of intoxication, including slurred speech, unsteady gait, and argumentative behavior. Despite these observations, the staff member continued to serve the patron alcoholic beverages. Under the regulatory framework of New South Wales, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the staff member to take when they first recognize these signs of intoxication? Option A. Continue serving the patron alcoholic beverages as they are a regular customer and the venue is busy, deferring the decision to refuse service to a supervisor later. Option B. Immediately cease serving the patron any further alcoholic beverages and offer non-alcoholic alternatives, explaining that further alcohol service is not permitted due to their level of intoxication, as per the Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW. Option C. Serve the patron only non-alcoholic beverages without explicitly refusing further alcohol service, hoping they will not ask for more alcohol. Option D. Discreetly inform a supervisor about the patron's condition and await their instructions before taking any action regarding service. The correct answer is B. Immediately cease serving the patron any further alcoholic beverages and offer non-alcoholic alternatives, explaining that further alcohol service is not permitted due to their level of intoxication, as per the Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Endeavour Group employees due to the inherent conflict between maintaining business relationships and upholding regulatory compliance. The audit findings highlight a potential breach of responsible service of alcohol, RSA, principles, requiring a nuanced approach that prioritizes customer safety and legal obligations over immediate commercial pressures. Careful judgment is essential to navigate the dual responsibilities of serving customers and adhering to the Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW, and Endeavour Group's internal RSA policies. The correct approach involves a direct and professional refusal of further service, clearly articulating the reasons based on the observed signs of intoxication and the legal requirements under the Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW. This aligns with the RSA principles of preventing intoxication and ensuring the safety of the patron and the public. Endeavour Group's internal policies would also mandate such action to mitigate risks and maintain its license. This approach demonstrates a commitment to responsible service, regulatory compliance, and ethical conduct, protecting both the individual and the company from potential penalties and reputational damage. An incorrect approach of continuing to serve the patron, despite clear signs of intoxication, would constitute a direct contravention of the Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW, and Endeavour Group's RSA policies. This failure to recognize and act upon signs of intoxication is a serious regulatory breach, potentially leading to significant fines for the individual and the company, as well as license suspension or cancellation. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for customer well-being and community safety. Another incorrect approach of deferring the decision to a supervisor without immediate intervention, while potentially seeking guidance, fails to acknowledge the immediate responsibility of the staff member on duty to prevent further intoxication. The Act places a duty of care on all staff involved in serving alcohol. Delaying action allows the patron's intoxication to worsen, increasing the risk of harm and making the situation more difficult to manage. This approach could be seen as an abdication of immediate responsibility. A further incorrect approach of serving only non-alcoholic beverages without explicitly refusing further alcohol service might be perceived as a workaround rather than a direct adherence to RSA principles. While a step in the right direction, it does not address the core issue of the patron's intoxication and the need to cease alcohol service entirely as mandated by law and policy. It could also lead to confusion or further attempts by the patron to obtain alcohol. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant legislation, e.g., Liquor Control Act 1988, NSW, and company policies. Staff should be trained to recognize signs of intoxication and empowered to act decisively. When faced with such a situation, the immediate priority is to assess the patron's condition against legal and policy thresholds. If intoxication is evident, the professional response is to refuse further alcohol service politely but firmly, explaining the legal and policy reasons. If the patron becomes aggressive or uncooperative, the escalation procedure to management or security should be followed, but the initial refusal of service remains paramount. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that an Endeavour Group employee has a close personal friendship with an individual who is a key decision maker at potential new supplier company. This supplier is now bidding for a significant contract with Endeavour Group. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Endeavour Group employee to ensure compliance with ethical standards and relevant Australian business regulations? Option A. Proactively disclose the personal relationship to their supervisor and seek guidance on managing the potential conflict of interest. Option B. Immediately sever the personal friendship to eliminate any perceived conflict of interest before engaging with the supplier. Option C. Proceed with evaluating the supplier's bid as normal, assuming the personal relationship will not influence their professional judgment. Option D. Secretly withdraw from any involvement in the supplier evaluation process without informing anyone. Correct answer is A. Proactively disclose the personal relationship to their supervisor and seek guidance on managing the potential conflict of interest. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee by requiring them to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure compliance with internal policies and relevant Australian consumer protection laws. The challenge lies in balancing personal relationships with professional obligations and maintaining the integrity of Endeavour Group's business practices. Careful judgment is required to avoid situations that could be perceived as favoritism or that could undermine fair competition and consumer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively disclosing the personal relationship to a supervisor and seeking guidance on managing the situation. This aligns with Endeavour Group's likely internal policies on conflicts of interest and ethical conduct, which typically mandate transparency and adherence to established procedures. From a regulatory perspective, Australian consumer law, such as the Australian Consumer Law, implicitly requires businesses to operate with integrity and avoid misleading or deceptive conduct. By disclosing and seeking guidance, the employee demonstrates a commitment to these principles, preventing potential breaches of consumer trust and ensuring that procurement decisions are made on merit, not personal connection. This approach upholds professional standards and protects Endeavour Group from reputational damage and potential regulatory scrutiny. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that involves proceeding with the supplier engagement without disclosure risks creating an undisclosed conflict of interest. This could lead to accusations of favoritism, potentially influencing procurement decisions away from the most competitive or suitable suppliers. Such a situation could contravene Endeavour Group's internal code of conduct and, in a broader sense, undermine the principles of fair trading expected under Australian consumer law, which aims to protect consumers and businesses from unfair practices. Another incorrect approach would be to directly engage in the supplier selection process while being aware of the personal relationship, without any form of disclosure or seeking guidance. This bypasses established internal controls designed to manage conflicts of interest. It could result in a procurement decision that is not based on objective criteria, potentially leading to a breach of Endeavour Group's procurement policies and exposing the company to risks associated with unfair business practices under Australian consumer law. Finally, an approach that involves terminating the personal relationship solely to avoid the conflict, without any disclosure or consultation, might be an overreaction and could still leave the perception of impropriety if the relationship was known or suspected. While it attempts to remove the conflict, it fails to address the professional obligation of transparency and adherence to company policy regarding the management of potential conflicts of interest. This approach neglects the established procedures for handling such situations within Endeavour Group. Professional reasoning. Professionals in roles involving procurement or supplier engagement at Endeavour Group should adopt a proactive and transparent approach when encountering potential conflicts of interest. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the potential conflict, personal relationship with a supplier. 2. Consulting internal policies and procedures related to conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. 3. Disclosing the conflict to the appropriate supervisor or compliance officer. 4. Seeking clear guidance on how to proceed, which may involve recusal from decision-making processes or other management strategies. This framework ensures adherence to both company standards and regulatory expectations for fair and ethical business operations. Question 19. Research into Endeavour Group's financial reporting practices reveals a scenario where a significant portion of sales are made under contracts with generous return policies. Management is keen to recognize the full value of these sales immediately, despite a historical trend of substantial returns in the lead-up to the end of the financial year, which approach best aligns with Endeavour Group's obligations under Australian accounting standards and the ASX listing rules. Option A. Recognize revenue for all sales and accrue a general provision for returns without specific historical data, relying on management's best guess. Option B. Recognize revenue for sales only when the return period has expired and the sale is deemed final, or recognize revenue based on a reliable estimate of expected returns, supported by historical data and disclosed in the financial statements. Option C. Recognize revenue for all sales upfront, assuming a minimal return rate based on optimistic projections, and disclose the return policy only if specifically asked by auditors. Option D. Defer revenue recognition for all sales made in the final quarter until the subsequent financial year to avoid any potential issues with returns. Correct answer is C. Recognize revenue for all sales upfront, assuming a minimal return rate based on optimistic projections, and disclose the return policy only if specifically asked by auditors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's operational needs and the ethical imperative to maintain accurate and transparent financial reporting, particularly within the context of Australian corporate law and the Australian Securities Exchange Act's listing rules. Endeavour Group, as a publicly listed entity, is subject to stringent disclosure obligations. The pressure to present a favorable financial outlook can tempt individuals to adopt aggressive accounting practices, which, if not grounded in regulatory compliance, can lead to misleading financial statements and significant reputational and legal damage. Careful judgment is required to balance commercial objectives with legal and ethical responsibilities. The correct approach involves a rigorous adherence to Australian accounting standards (OSP) and the ASX listing rules. This means that any revenue recognition must be based on the substance of transactions and comply with the OSP principles, ensuring that revenue is only recognized when it is probable that future economic benefits will flow to the entity and the amount can be reliably measured. Furthermore, any material changes in accounting policy or significant estimates that impact reported revenue must be disclosed in accordance with OSP 108 accounting policies. Changes in accounting estimates and errors and potentially require disclosure to the ASX under Listing Rule 3. 1. If they are price-sensitive. This approach prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and compliance, safeguarding the integrity of Endeavour Group's financial reporting and investor confidence. An incorrect approach that involves recognizing revenue prematurely based on anticipated future sales, without meeting the OSP criteria for recognition, constitutes a breach of accounting standards. This misrepresents the financial performance of Endeavour Group and can mislead investors. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the recognition of legitimate expenses to inflate current period profits, violates the matching principle inherent in OSP standards and misstates the true profitability of the company. Finally, an approach that involves selectively disclosing positive financial information while omitting negative trends or potential risks, without a clear regulatory basis for such omission, fails to meet the spirit and letter of ASX Listing Rule 3. 1. Which mandates continuous disclosure of any information that a reasonable person would expect to have a material effect on the price or value of the entity's securities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and applying relevant accounting standards and continuous disclosure obligations. This involves seeking clarification from accounting experts or legal counsel when in doubt, documenting all significant accounting judgments and their justifications, and fostering a culture where ethical considerations and regulatory compliance are paramount. When faced with pressure to manipulate financial reporting, professionals must remember their duty to the company and its stakeholders, which includes upholding the integrity of financial information. Question 20. Benchmark analysis indicates that Endeavour Group sales targets for promotional periods are ambitious, considering the company's commitment to responsible service of alcohol. Which of the following strategies best balances achieving these targets with upholding regulatory obligations and ethical standards? Option A. Delegating all responsibility for responsible service during promotions to individual store managers without providing overarching company-wide guidelines or training. Option B. Implementing enhanced staff training on identifying signs of intoxication and refusing service, coupled with clear guidelines for promotional activities that do not encourage excessive consumption. Option C. Developing aggressive marketing campaigns that highlight discounted prices, with a plan to address any responsible service issues reactively as they arise. Option D. Focusing solely on increasing the volume of alcohol sales during promotional periods, with the assumption that staff will naturally manage responsible service. Correct answer is B. Implementing enhanced staff training on identifying signs of intoxication and refusing service, coupled with clear guidelines for promotional activities that do not encourage excessive consumption. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Endeavour Group employee due to the critical need to balance commercial objectives with regulatory compliance and ethical conduct, particularly concerning responsible service of alcohol. The pressure to meet sales targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that compromise customer safety and legal obligations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that business strategies do not inadvertently encourage or facilitate irresponsible alcohol consumption. The correct approach involves proactively developing and implementing policies and training programs that embed responsible service of alcohol principles within sales and marketing activities. This aligns with Endeavour Group's commitment to responsible practices and adheres to the spirit and letter of Australian alcohol regulations, such as those found in the Liquor Act 2007, NSW, or equivalent state legislation, and industry codes of conduct. Such an approach demonstrates a commitment to customer well-being and long-term business sustainability by mitigating risks associated with alcohol-related harm. An incorrect approach that prioritizes sales volume above all else, without adequate consideration for responsible service, would fail to meet regulatory obligations. This could lead to breaches of liquor licensing conditions, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on reactive measures after incidents occur, neglects the preventative obligations mandated by responsible service of alcohol frameworks. This reactive stance is insufficient for demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to harm minimization. A third incorrect approach, relying on individual staff discretion without clear organizational policies or training, creates inconsistency and increases the risk of noncompliance, as staff may not be adequately equipped to make informed decisions regarding responsible service in the context of sales targets. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and adhering to all relevant legislation and company policies. This involves a proactive risk assessment of sales and marketing initiatives, ensuring that any promotional activities do not encourage excessive consumption. Regular training and reinforcement of responsible service principles are crucial, alongside mechanisms for reporting and addressing concerns. The ultimate goal is to integrate responsible service into the core business operations, ensuring that commercial success does not come at the expense of community safety and legal compliance.